Discover how an amazing encounter at a cafe revealed the surprising transformation of a single dad living in the shadows of his own doubts. Rain pooled in the uneven cracks of the pavement as Matt stood beneath the cafe awning, his heart a jumble of anxiety and uncertainty. He could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. The soothing aroma of coffee wafted through the air, promising warmth and comfort, but it felt like just another reminder of what he hadn't accomplished. He glanced at Lily, her bright smile a barrage of innocence against the relentless gray. What was he doing for her? Just mechanics, just survival. But was it enough? Inside the cafe, the clamor of voices mingled with the sound of clinking cutlery. It was a cozy haven in a bleak world, yet Matt felt detached, as if he were observing a scene from afar. A spilled drink disrupted his thoughts, laughter erupting from a nearby table before settling into awkward murmurs. That laughter was music to his ears, a sound he longed to join, but his mind raced with what-ifs and could-have-beens. Suddenly, a soft voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. Oops. My fault. A woman stood there, flushed with embarrassment, eyes dancing with curiosity. It's okay, he replied, an unexpected smile breaking through his worry. Their conversation unfolded gently, the kind of easy banter that felt foreign yet familiar. Elizabeth was an art professor, visiting town for the weekend. The way she talked about creativity ignited something long dormant in Matt, a flicker of passion vaguely remembered. But like clockwork, doubt crept in, shadowing the ember she had ignited. What did a mechanic know about art? The townsfolk would dismiss him as a dreamer, another sorrowful story to meld with the gossip that lingered in the air. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. Matt's heart raced with an overwhelming blend of hope and fear. He wanted to share his thoughts, his ideas, but layers of self-doubt held him back. Every dream he'd considered had been buried by the day-to-day grind of fatherhood and work. On the one hand, he wanted to dive into art, to reclaim that part of himself, yet on the other, he wrestled with the nagging feelings of inadequacy, of being just a mechanic. The voices of his friends echoed in his mind, affirming, reinforcing his fears and stifling his spirit. And then there was the impending arrival of his estranged father, in addition to the personal chaos he could barely manage. The past felt like a boulder waiting to roll down the hill, threatening to crush all his newfound ambitions. Could he even begin to reconcile years of hurt while standing on the precipice of change? As he and Elizabeth exchanged glances filled with unspoken understanding, Matt felt a tug within him, caught between the safety of familiarity and the thrilling pull of potential. Could he really showcase the artwork bubbling within him? The gallery opening loomed like a storm on the horizon, and with each tick of the clock, the weight of expectation pressed deeper into his chest. Could he rise above the noise, break through the stigma, and reclaim his identity as an artist while being the father Lily needed? With uncertain determination, Matt's mind spun wildly how to be everything when, in reality, he felt like nothing at all. As the rain cascaded outside, he stood staring at the flickering flame of possibility, unsure of what awaited him. The following morning, Matt awoke with a mix of anticipation and dread coiling in his stomach. Sunlight trickled through his window, banishing the shadows of the stormy night, yet the brightness felt overwhelming. He wrestled with his mind, battling the thought of venturing into the unknown, an art gallery, a place he'd never thought he'd step into, now entangled with his dreams and fears. After breakfast, while Lily colored in her sketchbook, Matt watched her, the way she poured her soul into the crayon strokes. A flicker of envy surfaced. What would it feel like to be so uninhibited and creative? He longed to pull out a brush, to dabble in color, but fear clawed at him. Could he really face the gallery scene where judgment cloaked everyone's eyes? Daddy, look! Lily's excited voice drew him back to the present. She proudly showed off a drawing that looked like a mishmash of rainbow colors. It's you, me, and the flowers. Can you tell? Of course, it's beautiful, he replied, feeling warmth spread through him. The innocence in her art was a reminder of the joy that creation could bring. There it was, the embers reignited. She didn't care what anyone thought, and perhaps that was the secret. Freedom existed in playing without boundaries. Placing a hand on his heart, Matt contemplated. How would it feel to create, not for approval but simply for the act of creation itself? The thought buzzed in his mind like electricity. He suddenly felt like he was at a crossroads, a decision to make that could alter the trajectory of his life. With undeterred resolve, he sought out paper and a pencil. The world around him faded as he began to sketch, his hand moving almost instinctively. Lines became shapes, shapes turned into images. It was an unfamiliar thrill. His heart raced, echoing Lily's delight. Each stroke felt like an act of defiance against his self-imposed limitations. Just then, he heard an insistent knock on the door. It was the very embodiment of his past approaching, an unwanted guest in his moment of clarity. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door to find his father standing there, an uncertain look etched across his features. "Matt, can we talk?" His father's voice was as heavy as the atmosphere surrounding them. "Why now?" Matt snapped, his walls instinctively rising. "I know I've been absent, but I want to make things right." That plea hung in the air, making it hard to breathe. Matt's heart thudded against his chest like a caged bird. Anxiety festered beneath the surface, yet with it came a strange sense of determination. He had wanted closure, he believed in the possibility of forgiveness, but this moment felt precarious. Could he balance this emotional tumult while exploring his potential as an artist? "Can we do this another time?" he asked, his voice firm yet strained. "I have something brewing here, something important." His father's brow furrowed, a flicker of disappointment darting across his face. "It's about time I showed up, don't you think? It's about more than just you." Even as he spoke, doubt crept in. Was he deflecting an opportunity for understanding? Yet the urgency to nurture his newfound creativity simmered below the surface, compelling him to assert his needs. With that, he eased the door shut, shutting out a part of his past even as he opened a door to his future. The exhilaration of re-engaging with art clashed violently with the shadows left by family ties. How long could he put off this confrontation? Before he could spiral into indecision, he turned back to his supplies, reclaiming the brush with renewed vigor. The touch of paint was familiarity amid chaos, his heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of the canvas. Matt had a burning desire to create, to express everything he felt, everything he feared. And there he stood, the dichotomy of artist and father wrestling within him. Would he allow insecurities to overshadow the gifts he was uncovering? The art world awaited, and with every stroke of the brush, decisions defied the boundaries he'd once known. Unbeknownst to him, the moment he'd been waiting for was just around the corner, one that would demand he confront both his dreams and the father buried in past disappointments. As he painted, a quiet promise echoed in his heart. The time had come to face not just his father's shadow, but the artist he'd yearned to become. As the colors blended on the canvas, Matt lost himself in a whirlwind of shapes and emotions. The bright swirls spoke of hope, while darker hues whispered of fear and regret. He hadn't realized how loud those feelings had been until they were released onto the page. It was intoxicating, this process of unveiling himself through art. The studio, with its chaos of colors and brushes, felt like a refuge from the world, a stark contrast to the confrontation he had just avoided. Lost in his reverie, he didn't notice the hours slip away until a gentle tap echoed against his door. This time, it wasn't his father, it was Lily. "Daddy, can we have lunch?" Her voice was soft, a gentle reminder of the responsibilities that still tethered him to reality. "Sure, sweetheart. Just give me a minute," he called back, reluctant to break from the moment of creativity. As he cleaned his brushes, a strange excitement bubbled inside him. The artwork wasn't just a distraction, it felt like an extension of himself, a way to communicate the myriad of emotions he kept tightly coiled inside. After lunch, they cuddled on the couch, Lily's sketchpad resting between them. She flipped through her drawings, each one a triumph of her imagination. "Look at this one. I drew a castle where all the dragons are friendly." she exclaimed. That's amazing. He responded, a genuine smile breaking over his features. You're so creative, Lily. Do you ever worry about what others might think? She stared at him, her brow furrowed. No. I just like making things. Why? Matt's heart sank at the clarity of her response. If a child could embrace creativity without fear, why couldn't he? You have a point, he said, shifting his perspective. Perhaps the value of art was not in recognition but in the act itself, a conclusion so simple and yet so difficult for him as an adult to embrace. That afternoon, he found himself back at the easel, finger paint smudged on his palms as he engaged in a different kind of exploration. There was a freedom in splattering the paint across the canvas, a visceral release of pent-up emotions. The more he painted, the more he felt an awakening of something deep inside, a voice long silenced by self-doubt. So engrossed in his work, he hardly noticed how far the day had advanced until a phone call shattered the atmosphere. It was a number he recognized well but had scarcely spoken to since his father's appearance at his door. It was his mother. Matt, can you come by? Your dad's here. No. I can't, he replied, the tremor in his voice startling him. He wasn't ready to face his pain, not when he was standing at the threshold of his awakening. Seeking a balance between parental obligations and self-discovery felt insurmountable at that moment. Please. We need to talk as a family. The word family twisted like a knife in his stomach. He had resisted this clash for too long, a dichotomy between the man he was becoming and the familial ties he was trying to sever. But the call held an unanticipated weight. It was a chance to reshape his past with the clarity he'd gained in the present. After what felt like an eternity of silence, he hung up the phone, heart racing. His instinct was to retreat into the safety of his studio, paintbrush in hand, but beneath the longing for artistic reprieve lay a pulse of determination. He wasn't ready to let the past consume him, yet addressing it felt essential now. Returning to his canvas, he added strokes that echoed the turmoil within him, dark lines mixed with vibrant colors, a metaphor for his conflicting desires. As the image took shape, he found a cathartic release, a reflection of resilience. But the clock ticked mercilessly on, each minute drawing him closer to a decision he hadn't anticipated making. Could he face the meeting, armed with the clarity that art had given him? Or would he falter in their expected narrative, reverting to the shadows? The promise of answers lingered in the air, and the path ahead became clearer as his brush finished yet another stroke. His heart swelled with the pressing desire to uncover truth, both in his artwork and within himself. The gallery of life awaited, yet it was not merely the canvas that was about to be unveiled, it was the journey he must confront, including the shadows of family he had been running from. Just as he set down his brush, a surge of boldness propelled him forward. The moment of confrontation beckoned, the rawness of his journey demanding to unfold. He stood still, his breath steadying. The time for denial had passed. The time had come to face the gallery of his life, a place where both his past and present would collide in unexpected ways. The sun had barely settled beyond the horizon when Matt arrived at the café, an unassuming little place that had grown into a sanctuary for locals seeking solace in brewed comfort and baked delights. It was nothing like the vibrant chaos of his studio. The familiar scent of coffee hung in the air, mingling with the sweetness of pastries and the anxious energy of patrons. He hesitated at the entrance, the bell ringing against the door a herald of his uncertainty. Matt scanned the small room and spotted his family in a corner booth. There was his mother, her face a mask of apprehension, and across from her sat his father, glancing toward the door. In that moment, the world outside faded away. The clinking of cups and the soft chatter of conversation became mere background noise to the beating of his heart, which seemed loud enough to draw attention. Matt! His mother called, signaling him to join them. With a breath that felt as heavy as the weight of years lost, he pushed himself forward. Each step felt monumental, a tangible clash between past grievances and the promise of a new dawn. Hey, he managed, easing into the booth with an awkwardness that draped over him like an ill-fitting cloak. The silence that followed was thick with tension, laden with unspoken apologies and resentments. Thanks for coming, his mother said, her tone both warm and tentative. Matt just nodded, his throat tightening as the reality of their rendezvous loomed over him. What had he hoped to achieve? Clarity? Forgiveness? The rational answers felt eclipsed by a swirling fog of anxiety. Listen, we thought it might help if we talked about things, his father finally interjected, his voice gruffer than Matt remembered. With every word, fragments of their past stumbled into Matt's mind, frayed relationships, harsh words, memories tainted by pain. But today was different, the echoes of his mother's voice rising above the mist of resentment. What do we even say? Matt questioned, his tone betraying a blend of defiance and vulnerability. What can we fit into this conversation that hasn't been said before? His father sighed deeply, weariness lining his features. Maybe instead of what's been said, we could try focusing on what we've all done since then, how we've changed. The suggestion hung in the air. How had he changed? The question anchored itself in Matt's mind, demanding an answer he wasn't sure he could satisfy. He had embraced art, discovered vulnerability, but was that enough to reshape their history? What if change meant nothing to them, that his endeavors here were futile? Staring into the dark depths of his coffee cup, Matt realized he was at a crossroads. Would he allow the past to drown his new self, or could he craft a different narrative, one where all three of them could breathe? Maybe I've avoided this because it feels safer, he confessed, surprised by his own honesty. But I don't want to run anymore. I want to have a real relationship with both of you. His mother nodded, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. We're so proud of you, Matt. This journey into your art, it shows how brave you are. Matt blinked, a rush of gratitude mingled with shame surging through him. But I've also felt lost, he added, his voice faltering. Lost in shadows I didn't know how to escape. The silence returned, this time layered with mutual recognition of their shared struggles. It could be a turning point, a place where their collective pain became the canvas on which they could paint a new history together. As they began to share their stories, pieces of hope intertwined with their confessions, Matt sensed the walls that had kept them apart start to crumble. And yet, in the midst of that fragile connection, a seed of doubt began to sprout. Was this healing genuine, or merely a momentary escape from their painful realities? Would this newfound dialogue survive the criticisms of the outside world and their own inner tumult? As he took a breath to speak, an unexpected enter of tension reverberated through the cafe. Matt turned, his gaze meeting that of a stranger seated across the room, someone who seemed to be watching their reunion unfold with keen interest. It was an unfamiliar face, but one that seemed somehow familiar, like a specter from a past he hadn't fully confronted. His heart raced anew, and as the stranger's eyes locked onto his, the whisper of possibility returned. Matt felt the pull of an unknown development beckoning him forward, an unseen chapter waiting to be written. What had he stumbled onto in this intersection of family and fate? Could this moment unravel layers he hadn't been ready to face, or would it simply lead to a deeper understanding of what his life and his art were meant to depict? The tension in the air surged as Matt stood poised on an edge, ready to discover what awaited him beyond this cafe's walls. Matt's breath quickened as he held the stranger's gaze. The cafe felt suddenly small, the shadows stretching between them. His family's voices faded into a distant hum, replaced by the pounding rhythm of his heart. What was it about this stranger that drew him in, a sense of familiarity, or perhaps an underlying sense of dread? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, mind racing. The faces of the people before him blurred, replaced by memories he had tucked away. High school hallways, art classes, a group of friends laughing. Had he truly moved on from that life, or was it forever entwined with him? Matt? His mother's voice broke through his distractions, drawing him back. Her expression flickered with concern, as though sensing the lingering chaos in his mind. Are you okay? He nodded, forcing a smile that felt foreign. Just thinking, he said, trying to shake off the stranger's intense stare. About what? His father probed, leaning forward with curiosity. Matt wrestled with whether to reveal his inner turmoil. Should he share the discomfort, the unsettling feeling that washed over him like an iceberg crashing into his calm sea? But in truth, he was tired of hiding. This was a moment of potential transformation, not just with his family but within himself. What if I'm afraid of the past coming back to haunt me? He admitted, feeling the weight of his confession settle around the table. What if this new beginning is just a facade, something I can't maintain? Both his parents exchanged glances, the unspoken understanding bridging unyielding gaps. His mother sighed, her expression softening. It's natural to be scared, Matt. Change is hard. But it can also bring clarity. Matt let her words resonate. Clarity wasn't that what he sought? He wanted not just to face his past but to harness it, to paint his masterpiece out of pain, fear, and love. Yet with that desire came a spark of doubt. Could he really turn the shards of his history into something beautiful, or would it shatter everything again? Gathering his resolve, he returned his gaze to the stranger, who still watched intently, seemingly waiting for the right moment to intervene. It was maddening, this connection that felt almost predestined. Do you see that guy? Matt whispered to his parents while nodding toward the stranger. He seems to be watching us. Why don't you go talk to him? His father suggested, his voice steady but laced with apprehension. It could be an opportunity. You've always been good at connecting with people. Matt felt the heat of his family's gaze like a spotlight. This was a chance, a nudge to confront a truth he had avoided for too long. With a deep breath, he wiped his sweating palms on his jeans, resolved to take the leap. All right, I'll give it a shot, Matt said, bitterness and excitement swirling within him. He stood slowly, his legs shaky but determined. The disbelief in his own bravery surprised him, challenging the assumptions he had long made about himself. As he made his way across the cafe, the chatter dulled. Every step felt like wading through molasses, each heartbeat thrumming in his ears. In that moment, he wasn't just confronting a stranger, he was pushing against the very walls of his own comfort zone. When he reached the stranger, the man smiled calmly, the kind of smile that suggested he had been waiting a long time for this encounter. You've been going through a lot, the stranger said, tilting his head knowingly. But what if I told you I understand that struggle? And what if I offered you a new perspective? Matt paused, caught off guard by the directness. Was this what he needed, a confrontation of his own narratives intertwined with the stranger's experiences? Or was this merely another distraction, a temporary balm for deeper wounds? But the glimmer of possibility in the stranger's eyes sparked a sense of urgency within him. He needed to decipher the truth behind this meeting. He was on the brink of a new revelation, but its form remained distinctively elusive. Tell me, Matt urged, ready to confront whatever awaited in this unexpected dialogue. What do you know about transformation? As the stranger began to speak, Matt felt that he was, at last, stepping into a realm of understanding he hadn't anticipated, inching closer to the very change he had so desperately yearned for. What once felt like mere chance might be the catalyst of his journey. What awaited him was still uncertain, but he could feel the tides shifting. And within that moment, the future loomed before him, filled with potential and fraught with challenges. Could he truly embrace whatever came next, no matter how unsettling? Matt focused intently on the stranger's words, the rhythm of the cafe fading into the background as each phrase hung heavy with meaning. Transformation is about embracing discomfort, the man explained, his voice steady. It's like an artist refining a piece, smoothing the rough edges, adding layers. You don't just erase your past, you incorporate it, use it as part of your canvas. Matt's mind spun at the metaphor. He had spent so much time trying to distance himself from his past, convinced that wiping it out would be the key to moving forward. But could he really weave the fractured pieces of his life into something coherent? As he contemplated the possibility, anxiety morphed into cautious curiosity. What if I struggle to do that? He asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. What if I can't find that beauty you're talking about? The stranger leaned in slightly, his demeanor shifting from casual observer to a more engaged mentor. That's the essence of growth, Matt. You won't have all the answers immediately. It's about exploration, even when the path seems daunting. Embrace that uncertainty. A flicker of recognition sparked within Matt. This resonated deeply with his creative drive, the passion that had waned over the years. As a student of art, He once lived for moments like this, where emotions translated into creative expression. Yet, here he was, standing on the precipice of rediscovering that passion amid doubt. "You know, I used to love painting," he confided, only half aware of the words flowing from his mouth. "But ever since, well, you know, life happened. I put the brushes down." The stranger's gaze intensified. "Have you ever considered that leaving behind your brushes might be your way of avoiding the imperfection that comes with creation? Remember, the real magic often hides in mistakes." A sudden rush of feelings surged within Matt, a mixture of excitement and dread. Could he re-engage with the artistry that once brought him joy? The thought alone felt like standing at the edge of a diving board, looking into a pool that shimmered below, inviting yet intimidating. "What's your secret?" he blurted out, the question spilling from him in the fervor of his rediscovered desire. "How do you manage to embrace this kind of transformation?" A knowing smile creased the stranger's lips. "I learned to see failure not as an end, but as feedback. Each stumble is a step toward understanding yourself better. You can either hide from it or face it head-on. Let me ask you, when was the last time you painted deliberately without fear?" The question lingered, penetrating Matt's thoughts like an arrow. The truth was, it had been years. He had let the weight of expectation extinguish his creativity, banking on a future where he could simply avoid failure. But time glided by, and he found himself frozen in place, stagnant and devoid of fulfillment. Taking a deep breath, inspiration releasing its grip on his anxieties, Matt replied, "I think it's time I gave it a shot again. I need to confront that fear." "Yes," the stranger encouraged, his tone brimming with affirmation. "Remember, every artist has their critics. The only harshest critic you need to battle is yourself. Aim for progress, not perfection." As Matt absorbed that wisdom, a sense of empowerment surged through him. The stranger hadn't just offered advice, he had illuminated a path that had long remained shrouded. It wasn't merely a question of learning from his failures, it was about reclaiming his identity through them. "Let us do this," he affirmed, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. "Excellent," the stranger said, his expression shifting into something more serious. "But remember, the real challenge lies not just in picking up a brush again. It's about standing your ground when old habits try to reel you back in." Matt sensed a pivotal moment unfolding, yet beneath the surface, the hint of a storm brewed. What awaited him on this creative journey? More importantly, would he be able to confront the ghosts of his past, the self-doubt that had plagued him for years? "Before you go, Matt," the stranger said, tilting his head slightly. "What's your next move? What will you create?" Matt looked deep into the man's eyes, feeling the tension of unresolved questions pressing against his chest. He realized this was only the beginning, a doorway opened into a world he had long sought yet feared. "I'll create something that tells my story," he replied, filled with grit. "No matter how imperfect it may be." But as he turned to leave, a flicker of doubt pricked at his mind. What if facing that truth meant unraveling more than just his fears? What lay ahead could very well redefine not just his art but his entire life. The depth of that uncertainty loomed over him like a looming storm, preparing to unleash its power. Would he stand tall amidst the turbulence or falter before making his mark? Matt stood at the threshold of the cafe, the world around him momentarily paused. With each step away from the familiar warmth of the stranger's conversation, he reverted to doubt. The lingering taste of possibility clashed with the bitter nostalgia of his past failures. What had he really committed to? The thought pocketed a whisper of fear deep inside him, a persistent reminder of the creative blocks that had suffocated him for years. Pushing the door open felt like breaking through a barrier, yet Matt couldn't shake the sensation that he was teetering on the edge of something vast and unknown. This was more than just picking up a paintbrush again, it was choosing to confront fragments of himself he'd long buried. With a deep breath, he steadied his resolve. Arriving at his small, cluttered apartment, a storm of thoughts tangled with anticipation and anxiety. The easel, often folded away in shame, stood in the corner like a relic of his former self. Dust clung to it, clashing with the vibrant memories of colors and the joyful chaos of creativity it had once witnessed. He hesitated, caught between the promise of transformation and the fear of failure. Overwhelmed by uncertainty, Matt decided to clear a space. He moved boxes and old canvases, unearthing sketches he'd made, images marred by insecurity, spontaneity clashing with self-criticism. Each piece told a story, a failed attempt to translate his emotions onto canvas. As he flipped through the remnants of his history, he felt a pressing urge to honor these fragments rather than shred them away as remnants of disappointment. His mind wandered back to the stranger's words. Embrace imperfection. With a decisive motion, he pulled out a blank canvas, the stark white surface staring back at him, begging to be filled. What if he poured the rawness of that regret into creation? What if he bared his soul through each stroke, uninhibited by the fear of judgment? Matt grabbed a palette, his fingers trembling as they reached for the paint. Bold strokes splashed onto the canvas, sudden bursts of colors, each representing a facet of his emotions. He painted joy, anger, fear, and hope in unison, channeling the turmoil into something tangible. It felt liberating. The act of creating began to wash over him like a wave, pulling him into the depths, each wave a release of the years spent locked away in hesitation. But as he layered the colors, an unexpected thought interrupted. Who would see this? What would they think? The ghosts of criticism filled the small space, a chorus that mirrored his long-held fears. For a moment, he faltered. The familiar backslide towards self-doubt threatened to drown out the spark ignited by his earlier confrontation with discomfort. Pushing through, he intentionally splattered paint, allowing the emotions to carry the brush rather than his mind. In that chaos, he discovered moments of clarity buried beneath layers of doubt. He began to realize that what mattered was not the external validation but the process of creation itself, the journey of pouring himself into his work. Yet, just as he felt a breakthrough unfolding, a shadow loomed, a reminder of the stranger's warning not to let old habits rear their heads. The voice of his insecurities skittered insistently in the back of his mind, just when he was starting to find his groove. With paint-covered hands, he stepped back to reassess. The canvas held his struggles, his rebirth, but it also contained a question, as if it dared him to explore further. What truth did he still avoid? What deeper aspects of himself lay hidden beneath the layers he decreated? Matt stared at his evolving artwork, uncertain yet fiercely determined to dig deeper. The journey wouldn't only be about artistry but about confronting the stories he had locked away, stories woven in the threads of his experiences, capable of giving dimension to his work and perhaps, to his life. As he stood before the growing canvas, an unsettling realization emerged. Would he have the courage to face the darkest corners of his past and let them spill into his art? Or would he retreat, allowing fear to redirect his path once more? The unanswered questions stirred restlessly in his mind, crafting a potent blend of fear and exhilaration. He had taken the first step, but now faced the looming challenge of confronting what came next. What revelations awaited him as he peeled back the layers of his own creation? Would he find clarity in the very chaos he was painting? With the canvas still wet, the vibrant colors swirling together into chaotic patterns that reflected his inner turmoil, Matt was at a crossroads. The ambiguity of creation offered no clear path, yet it buzzed with potential. He felt the weight of his own hesitations pressing down on him as he contemplated not just paint and canvas, but the very essence of what it meant to be vulnerable. Could he allow the truths of his past, the deep-seated fears and long-buried disappointments, to spill onto the canvas? As he dipped his brush back into the paint, each stroke seemingly echoed memories, flashes of smiling faces, moments of laughter, but more hauntingly, the silence that followed the loudest chasms in his life. What lay beneath his intricate layers was still masked in the shadows. He needed to confront that darkness, or risk forever hiding behind the armors of colorful abstraction. Time slipped away, and distractions dwindled as dusk settled in his apartment. The golden light from the window softly illuminated his work, casting shadows that whispered both encouragement and warning. Digging deeper within himself required more than bravery. It demanded a certain commitment to honesty, a promise to allow his raw truths to emerge without the burden of expectation or judgment. Matt took a moment to breathe, placing the brush down. He paced the small room, the walls seemingly closing in around the kaleidoscope of colors. Would expressing his despair turn into a pit of despair itself? Or would he find inspiration in that darkness? The threshold he stood upon was tangible, it separated the safety of evocation from the risk of catharsis. He could feel that strange sort of exhilaration bubbling up within him, frightening yet liberating. His mind zigzagged through pivotal moments of his past, the time he hesitated to speak out in the art competition, the envious spark in his peers' eyes, and the crushing moment he let fear paralyze him into submission. Each memory felt like an echo, urging him to confront not only those external judgments but also the harshest critic himself. With renewed determination, he returned to the canvas, each dip of the brush now purposeful. A fiery red painted across the center, anger. Next, a deep blue, representing profound sadness and longing. Layering after layering, each color began to breathe life not just into the painting but also into his spirit. As the brush danced across the surface, Matt's heart raced with clarity. He was no longer merely a sum of his past failures, he was also an architect of his reality. Hours turned into what felt like mere minutes as he painted, gradually transforming the canvas into a soul map teeming with authenticity. He found catharsis not in the pursuit of admiration, but in the expression of raw experience. Finally, he rested, stepping back and surveying the chaotic symphony of colors before him, a visual testament to his journey. Yet as his eyes drifted across the canvas, a gnawing question re-emerged: would others understand this expression of his truth? Or would they see only a mere collection of colors smeared together? Would he allow that external judgment to shrink him back into silence? The room around him felt both expansive and suffocating. He began to realize that this was more than just a reflection of his dark moments, it was a challenge, a declaration to himself. The canvas had become more than art, it was a powerful mirror to his growth, urging him to seek professional success and personal comfort from within. As he set down his brush one last time, Matt pondered his next steps. How would he present this vulnerability to the world, and what if the echo of his past returned in criticism, cruel and unforgiving? The thought gripped him, intermingling fear with the thrill of potential renaissance. Would that be enough for him? He stood before his creation, breathing heavily, as the looming question reverberated in his heart: would he truly have the courage to showcase all that he'd painted, to invite the world into his inner sanctum? The moment of truth was on. The horizon, ready to test everything he fought to reclaim. What awaited him in that delicate balance between revelation and vulnerability? Would he take the leap and step into the spotlight, or retreat again, allowing shadows to claim his voice? Matt stood in the thick silence of his studio, the colorful chaos behind him like a slumbering beast. His heart pounded as he faced the true challenge emerging not from the canvas, but from within himself. He craved validation yet feared it, a tidal wave of conflicting emotions trapped in his chest. He crossed his arms, the urge to shrink back battling against the growing desire to step forward. With a deep breath, he refocused on the work before him. The colors danced and twisted, almost whispering secrets that only he could hear. This creation was an embodiment of all that he had fought against, the shame and fear that had clouded his voice for too long. A visceral reflection of his journey thus far. Could he summon the courage to share it with the world? The idea of showing this piece evolved into a gnawing obsession. He envisioned an opening night, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Yet, each time he allowed himself this fantasy, doubt surged. What if his vulnerability was met with critical judgment? What if the raw beauty he had created was dismissed as nothing more than chaos? Matt's internal debate seeped into his next painting session. Frustration guided his hand as he smeared certain areas with thicker paint, creating an almost tangible distaste for the uncertainty that hovered around the edges of his mind. It was a violation of the freedom he had just begun to embrace. Shaping his anxiety into action, he swiped the brush, creating bold strokes that mirrored his inner struggle. It was then he realized this was the art of confronting fear. He was not merely combining colors, he was dismantling the limitations he had placed upon himself. Each stroke was a defiance against the failure he harbored, a rebellion against self-doubt. Later that week, Matt found himself in a quaint café, attempting to extract himself from the swirling anxieties that clung to him. As he nursed a coffee, he overheard snippets of conversations, artists discussing the vulnerability of creative expression. Each word ignited sparks on the edges of his simmering resolve. The stories they shared mirrored his own hesitations, capturing the essence of what it meant to risk telling one's truth. Then, In an unexpected moment, their eyes met. A woman with bright, inquisitive eyes caught his gaze, her presence radiating warmth. Something familiar stirred within him as their shared silence unfolded. Feeling a sudden compulsion, he introduced himself. She introduced herself as Lena, an art student passionate about meaningful expression. They shared their journeys, each revelation emboldening him. Lena's approach resonated. Art is a mirror, isn't it? Reflecting who we are and our willingness to take risks. When I exhibit, I don't hide my flaws, those are my strength, she said, her voice steady and encouraging. A weight lifted from Matt's shoulders, replaced by a burgeoning confidence. Her insight unlocked something deep within him. He realized that the criticism he feared would never be as damaging as denying himself the chance to be fully seen. Each artistic endeavor was fraught with risk, but therein lay the essence of creation itself, an invitation to both chaos and connection. As they parted ways, he felt an exhilarating rush. Their conversation felt like a catalyst, propelling him into the next phase of his artistic journey. He left the cafe resolved to embrace the vulnerability Lena spoke of, swearing to honor his truth on the canvas. The clock was ticking, he had to make a decision. Show the world the kaleidoscope of his experience, or retreat back under the veil of anonymity. What if this painting could ruin him? What if it could redeem him? Back in his studio, the canvas loomed with a life of its own. It was time to commit. His moment of truth was unfolding. Would he defy the whispers of doubt and present his heart to the world, or would he shy away, allowing the shadows to reclaim his voice? The answer hung in the air, a breath away from revelation. Matt stood before the canvas, the vibrant colors swirling in chaotic patterns that reflected his inner turmoil. Each stroke had been a dialogue, a conversation with wounds he kept tightly wrapped. This creation was not merely a painting, it was a testament to his transformation, a visual narrative portraying his fears, hopes, and newfound self-acceptance. The gallery opening was mere days away, and excitement threatened to unravel his burgeoning confidence. Would anyone understand the raw honesty that lay inscribed within the canvas? The gnarled fingers of self-doubt had scrabbled at the fringes of his mind, a cacophony of anxiety echoing, what if it wasn't enough? What if they didn't see it the way he envisioned? Yet, as he stood there, the memories of his conversations with Lena vividly replayed, her voice providing clarity. Art is a mirror, she had said, it reflects our willingness to take risks. A burgeoning realization washed over him with impulsive urgency. He had let fear dictate his past, it was time to allow courage to guide him. With newfound resolve, Matt picked up his brush. The very act of creating became his act of defiance. He painted with fervor, layers of emotions spilling forth as he embraced imperfection. There was no longer a question of skill, it was a pursuit of honesty. As he dabbed his brush into colors representing vulnerability, deep blues, harsh reds, and glowing yellows, a wave of liberation coursed through him. This painting would be raw, uninhibited, just as he had denied himself for far too long. The following evening, as he prepared for the gallery showing, a nervous thrill electrified his senses. He dressed simply, an amalgamation of pride and trepidation coursing through his veins. The gallery itself was a vibrant whirlwind of artists mingling, chatter suffusing the rooms, and the aroma of fine wine layering the air. Yet amidst the external chaos, Matt remained acutely aware of the pulse quickening in his heart. His canvas stood poised, a silent sentinel against the backdrop of artistic elation. People moved around it, glancing at the colors, some pausing longer, tilting their heads, their expressions hinting at curiosity. That's when it happened. A woman with piercing green eyes, someone he didn't recognize, stepped closer, her expression shifting as she absorbed the piece. "There's something so visceral about this," she murmured softly, catching his eye. "It feels like you've poured your soul onto this canvas." Matt felt the warmth of recognition flood through him. It's a part of my journey," he confessed, his voice surprisingly even. "It's about embracing everything I've held back, the joy, the pain, the awakening." A flicker of understanding passed between them. The woman smiled, tilting her head in appreciation. "You've achieved something beautiful here. It's raw, authentic. That's what art should be, an invitation to confront oneself." Her words hung heavily in the air, striking a chord deep within him. No longer did he need to navigate his path hiding in shadows. The gallery echoed with laughter, applause, conversations he was partaking in this world, embraced by those who sought authenticity just as fervently as he did. As the night wore on, conversations flowed around him. He found himself speaking openly about his journey to several other attendees, men and women alike. He witnessed their reactions shift from curiosity to connection. They all seemed to resonate with echoes of their own struggles. The walls he had reinforced began to crumble, and with each exchange, he anchored himself to his past not in bitterness but in acceptance. The culmination of the evening arrived when an artist he greatly admired approached him, extending a hand. "Your work captured me," she confessed. "This piece, it's a reflection of courage and raw truth that's hard to come by. Keep creating, keep sharing." In that moment, everything coalesced into an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The myriad of fears that had stormed through his mind only days before transformed into an indelible calm. He had made profound strides from merely being a mechanic to embracing the artist he was born to be. As he stepped back from the crowd later that night, watching laughter unfold and stories shared, a wave of gratitude washed over him. He realized this experience had not just revitalized his artistic spirit, it had redefined his identity. He had stopped running from his past and learned to dance with it, instead leveraging pain as fuel for his creativity and resilience. With newfound confidence, Matt understood, he would continue to confront challenges, embrace his journey, and create art that reflected his truth, a lasting transformation fueled not only by talent but by an indomitable spirit. And in that moment of clarity and fulfillment, Matt knew he would never hide in the shadows again. His voice would not only speak through colors and shapes, but it would resonate in the stories shared with others inspired by his journey. Now it is your turn to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.